Hola, I'm Sonia Manzano, and you're listening to the Great Big Beautiful Podcast. Adios.
Have you ever been to Disneyland?
Affirmative.
That was definitely an e-ticket.
I can't believe all the new gadgets they've got now. For a while, we didn't even have a house phone, not to mention laser discs, high-def TV.
You are listening to the Great Big Beautiful Podcast. This week on the show.
But in children's entertainment, I think we tend to give them, yay!
Yeah.
And we tend to give them, aw. And those things are cool, you know, but I've met a lot of kids, and some of them are really angry, and some of them are really sad, and some of them are incredibly inspired, and they're very emotionally rich people. And I didn't see any reason not to sing to that, you know?
Here are your hosts, Jamie Greene and Justin Connors.
Are you an older sibling, Jamie, or is your sister younger than you, or?
I have one older sister.
So I'm the oldest in my family, and with that honor comes the distinct privilege of having to remember shows that your siblings watched when you might have been a little too old for them. One of those for me is Blue's Clues. My sister loved Blue's Clues, and you know, we're obviously talking to Steve today from Blue's Clues, but his voice is like drilled in my head, not because I was like a kid and you know what I mean, I wasn't like the kid that watched and adored, but my sister did, and
you were the older brother sitting there,
turn that
frustrated.
Yeah.
Oh my god, we gotta watch Blue's Clues again.
But you know, something that's really cool about that show is it is very different from other, and we touch on this in the interview, it's different from other kids shows of the time, because I don't know how to explain it, just the interaction he had with the audience, and you know what I mean, he was just different. He felt more real, like a friend than anything. It was
one of the first shows that broke that fourth wall. Yeah. Like, he was talking to the audience, and like, there were shows obviously like Mr. Rogers did that. You know, he would talk to you and convey the message of the show. Right. And there were segments of Sesame Street where they would also do that. But, you know, at that time in like the 90s, kids shows weren't really by and large doing that. And so it was very different from a lot of the other shows that were on TV, in that he was talking to you sitting on your couch. And not only was he talking to you, but he would ask you a question and then wait, like
listen to you. Yeah.
Listen to you. And Nickelodeon took that, you know, and they used that in their other shows. So I don't know.
Did they ever?
Yeah. I mean, you've watched Dora and you've watched Diego. That's a huge part of Dora the Explorer, is that she asks you questions and she'll wait for your response. And I think Blue's Clues really set that formula up for a lot of their other shows that came after.
No, exactly. And like he said, that kid, or I don't want to give away the interview, but he was mentioning a time where he showed up somewhere as Steve, and the kids are just like, hey, Steve's here. You know, and that speaks to that, right? Because it's like he's their best friend, you know. Of course Steve's here. I'm having a Blue's Clues party. Why wouldn't he be?
You know, it's funny because it reminds me of the effect that social media has now. You know, social media, if you follow your favorite celebrity on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, you kind of feel like you know that person. Yep. You know, more so than ever before. Like when we were kids and we would just like watch a movie or show and be like, wow, there's that person that I see on TV. And if you saw them in real life for whatever reason, it was a huge deal. Right. But now I feel like people feel so close to their favorite celebrities because of Twitter and Instagram that if they ever meet them and I think this gives rise to a lot of the stories you hear about people just being completely inappropriate and overly personal with people that they just don't know at all because they feel that sense of connection.
Right. And where that's big too is in the YouTube world. I have a vlogger I watched, Casey Neistat, and I know, and I said in one of my videos that when he stopped vlogging that I know that we don't have a relationship, and I know we're not actually friends, and he has no idea who I am, but you spend 10 minutes a day watching his life, you really feel like you do. Like I felt like he was a buddy. Do you know what I mean? So when he stopped vlogging, it was like, oh, what am I gonna do? My best friend's like breaking up with me. You know, it's such a weird thing. And I'm not like a person that gets big in celebrity culture. It was just that relationship really is a real thing. It's crazy. I'm sure there's a study somewhere about it.
I'm sure there is. And I mean, but and it is a weird way connected to shows like Blue's Clues and Dora, you know, where Dora less so because it's a cartoon, but you know, with Blue's, you know, Steve was a real person on screen talking to me, or not to talking to the kid, listening, and then reacting to whatever the kid said. So they felt this really strong connection to him in a way that I did when I was watching Mr. Rogers when I was a kid. Well, you know, like I loved Sesame Street.
Yep.
And I tolerated Mr. Rogers. My mom loved Mr. Rogers. I tolerated Mr. Rogers. I didn't hate it. But I felt closer to Mr. Rogers than I did to anybody on Sesame Street.
Wow.
And that I think was because he was so personal and was talking to me, you know, personally, like he was addressing me.
And I think everybody would probably agree just because of the general reaction when you tell people, hey, we're interviewing Steve Burns from Blue's Clues. Everyone is, you know, they have some type of memory that, you know, anyone that grew up in that era. And even my mom texted me and she goes, that's so funny. I feel like I really know him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
like,
strange, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I am way too old for Blue's Clues. I'm only a couple of years younger than Steve. So I was not the target audience for that show when it was on TV. My kids have watched a little of it because it's on, I think it's on Amazon streaming. So they know what it is. But it's really funny. When I was in college, this was the late 90s, I worked at a Barnes & Noble. And back in the children's section, as they do now, they have all these stuffed animals of popular characters. And I remember we got now this was late 90s, so this was like the heyday of Blue's Clues.
Right.
We got in a little stuffed Blue, and I didn't watch the show. I was in college, but I just loved the design of that dog so much that I bought one. I was like, awesome. What was I, like a early 20s, you know, something college student. And I bought that dumb little dog because I just loved the design of it so much. Not because I really, you know, was watching this show, but I just, you know, and I think it was also cool that Blue was a girl. You know, most people don't really realize that unless they've watched a lot of the show, that Blue was a female dog.
Right. Wow. I think, you know, you just blew my mind because I didn't even know that.
You didn't know that?
I really didn't know that. Wow.
Yep. It was a girl. And I believe, so there was another dog they introduced, Magenta. That was the Magenta dog, the purple dog. Yep. I think they were both girls.
Okay. See, that's how much.
Blue. Everybody assumed Blue was a boy because he was blue.
And what's funny is Blue was the namesake of the show, but really Steve was the one that, in his years that he was on it, he was the one that really propelled it, which is crazy. Yeah. And I'm so happy we're talking to him today. And guys, you're in for a treat. It's really him. It's really Steve. He's here, and we're going to talk about a lot of cool stuff like his new album, time on the show. Here it comes, right at you. Here's Steve Burns. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm thrilled to talk to you today.
My pleasure, guys.
Let's start out talking a little bit about Foreverywhere. You've probably answered this a number of times, but why make a kids record?
Really, I just felt like I had a little bit left in the tank. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And working on Blue's Clues for so long, you know, I developed a point of view and I developed my own opinions and my own passions really for children's entertainment. And it kind of all got kicked off because Nickelodeon asked me to write a song about a groundhog one day. And I recorded it. Yeah, as they do. That's welcome to my life. And I had written a record with Steven Drozd of the Flaming Lips in 2003. And so he and I were really good friends. And I asked him if he wanted to be involved. And he said yes. And I flew down to Oklahoma City. And he and I wrote that song in about 10 minutes. And it was about as much fun as we've ever had. So while we were writing that song, we said, we need to do a whole record.
Yeah.
And we did, but the thing is, you know, he's in a big giant rock band, and you know, he was raising his family out there, so we really only could record on, you know, every 40th weekend when we had time. So it became the Chinese Democracy of Kids Records. It took us forever to get it out.
I love that description. I feel like we should clarify this, though. I mean, for people who well, most people haven't heard it yet because it hasn't come out, but it's classified technically as an album of children's songs or all ages songs. But I mean, you guys aren't singing Old MacDonald and the Wheels on the Bus. I've listened to the album a few times and I really like it. Like, aside from it being just like, I guess you could say, yes, they're children's songs or you're targeting a younger audience, but it's actually just really good music. I mean, at what point in production, though, does it get that all ages label? Do you realize, like, yeah, we're doing a kids album?
Well, Steven and I, in talking about it, we were very, very interested in the kind of kids music with the overlap. There's a Venn diagram, and there is an enormous amount of overlap. I don't think the things that make music great for adults are that different than the things that make music great, the things that can make music great for children. And he and I are both very interested in music that could be either, but is definitely both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of it out there. There's, one of the things he and I would always point to was Vince Guaraldi's music.
Sure.
Which is incredibly sophisticated, beautiful jazz music that I grew up on listening to as a child, which was and is still as beautiful to me now as it was then. I don't know an adult who doesn't love that music.
Mm-hmm.
And I also don't know a kid who doesn't love the Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. So it doesn't have to sound like we think children's music should sound.
Yeah. I
don't believe that it does.
Yeah.
And when we were recording it, our criteria was, does this move me?
Mm-hmm.
Does this make me smile? Does this inspire me? And if it did affect us in those ways, and it was still a kid's song, then we said, cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think that definitely comes across. I mean, you listen to the lyrics of the songs, and some of them obviously sound like you wrote them with kids in mind, and that you were making this kid's record. But the entire thing, when you take it as a whole, it's very ambitious, and you're definitely, I think the two of you are reaching for something that's, I guess, more artistic would be the right word than most kids' albums, strive for.
The word we use is expressive.
There you go.
I think that too often, and this doesn't just pertain to children's music, but in children's entertainment, I think we tend to give them yay,
yeah,
and we tend to give them oh, and those things are cool, But I've met a lot of kids, and some of them are really angry, and some of them are really sad, and some of them are incredibly inspired, and they're very emotionally rich people. And I didn't see any reason not to sing to that,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You've got some songs on the album, some of the different couple names. One is A Fact is a Gift That You Give Your Brain, and Okay Toilet Bowl. How challenging is it for you to put yourself in the appropriate headspace to write a song like that?
Zero challenge. You are talking to the person who could probably write poop songs all day. I mean, definitely not a challenge for this 43-year-old man-child to do. What's harder for me was, songs like The Unicorn and Princess Rainbow and the songs that were deliberately narrative and deliberately expressive.
Mm-hmm.
Those were more challenging, but more fun too.
It's funny in listening. Well, not funny, but it's when you're listening to the album, there's a definite. I don't want to say divide, but there's a you've got songs like Okay Toilet Bowl and poop songs, but then there are other songs that are much deeper, and you're trying to talk to kids in a way that children's music usually doesn't. I mean, you've got lyrics, and I'm going to quote your own lyrics to you here, but you've got lyrics like, I know you think you just knocked me down. You better look again because I'm still standing and I won't let you change who I am. And that's pretty deep for a kid's song, and then, the next track or the track before you've got your poo was once your food, so I mean, and I love that about this. I love that you're just, you're running the entire spectrum back to back. I mean, so with that dichotomy and then, the overarching legend of the unicorn that you're telling, are you trying to alternately make kids laugh and blow their minds like at the same time?
Well, those are all great. That's a really great question. And yes, I still have music in my life, and I don't know if you do, but I have music that I listen to specifically to cry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have, and I have music that I listen to when I want to run 5 miles. And that's so valuable to me. Like those are such valuable experiences to me, and reliably valuable experiences to me. And it was like that when I was a child. I remember I used to listen to my favorite record as a child was the soundtrack to Rocky, and not just the Gonna Fly Now inspirational music, but I think it's called Philadelphia Morning, where it's just the sad dirge of like French horns and failure. And it was so beautiful. As like a 6-year-old kid, I was super into that music. And so I don't see any reason not to. I think it's a form of respect, really, to write for that stuff as well. And the poop song and the other song that you mentioned are both songs about courage.
Yeah.
So just because it's a song about pooping doesn't mean it's not deep. said Sigmund Freud. And the other song that you singled out, I know I won't let you change who I am. That is a song about my direct experience being bullied in first grade. So yeah, that one is pretty deep. At least it was to me.
Knowing that now, is that song what you wished you had said, or was that your actual reaction?
Oh, I mean, I definitely stood up to my bully,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think I did it as cool hand Luke as that song is. I'm sure it was pretty awkward and terrible.
Yeah, but it's still awesome that you in first grade had the courage to stand up. I think a lot of kids don't have that courage.
Yeah. I don't know if it's courage or just a profound Napoleon complex, but there was enough was enough.
Yeah.
And it really did work because that guy and I became friends by 3rd grade.
Excellent.
And I was also sort of asking for it. Like I went to school 1st grade dressed head to toe as Mork from Mork. Precisely, with the suspenders, with the thumbs up pin and the khakis and the stripy shirt, which, I guess predicted the rest of my life, and the vest. And I was the first kid on the bus. I was the first stop. So I would take the back seat because that's clearly the cool seat.
Right.
And Brock, my bully's name was Brock.
Of course it was Brock.
Awesome. And he was the second kid on the bus. And there was another back seat available to him if he wanted it, but no, he had to have mine. And the injustice of that, I'm still not over it.
Now I'm trying to picture any kid going to school dressed completely like Mork. I love it. You can't get more 70s though than Mork. I mean, he defines the decade, right?
It might have been retro because how old are you in first grade? Like 6 or something?
Yeah,
I was born in 73, so yeah, I may have been running on reruns there. I don't know.
That is
so. Are you guys going to tour with this album?
I wish. We really don't know what that would look like. I mean, obviously, the Flaming Lips are a huge giant rock band, and when they tour, they do the whole world. So, and also, I'm playing virtually nothing on this record because I'm working with Steven Drozd, who's an absolute genius. So, I don't know how we would. I know we'd love to. So, who knows? Maybe we can work something out where, you know, when the Lips do a festival and there's a kid stage, we do something.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
But we are doing a show in Brooklyn on the 26th at Brooklyn Bowl for the launch of the record.
Sweet. Are the tickets still available?
Yep.
Awesome. All right,
You can buy them
link
on
up to
Brooklyn
that.
Bowl website. Yep. And I think you can also link to that. It's linked on my webpage, stevensteven.com.
Awesome. We'll definitely do that. A question that I'm sure you've thought about, but do you see yourself as a kid's musician, or is there not a difference between that and quote unquote real musician?
You know, I really don't, and I never really saw myself as a children's entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
It was never something I aspired to. It was just something I found myself privileged enough to be a part of, and I think that was part of why, if I was a compelling host on Blues Clues, I think that's why, was because I was always coming at it from a very different angle. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't. You can definitely be this kind of kid show host and just be goofy and hey, how you doing? And kids do respond to that in a reliably, you know, positive way, I suppose. But something in my soul said no. You know, I refused to do that, and I looked much more at like Grover and Fred Rogers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So in doing a little bit of research for this chat, I was surprised. You're probably not surprised, but I was surprised to see, like, if you just pop your name into Google, most, if not all, of the results for your name are either just debunking your death or discussing rumors about why you left Blues Clues. That's got to get old after a while, right?
Well, I guess it would. I really don't pay attention. But,
yeah.
But,
no, I was going to say, I mean, even most of the reviews for this album refer to you as, quote, Steve from Blues Clues. There's often there's often no last name. I mean, so how do you how did you come to terms with the fact that people will probably always equate you with that show before anything else?
Oh, you know, I think it's great.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very proud of it, and I think it's sweet, and I think it's wonderful. And it just gets better and better for me. I mean, I think when I was doing it and I was a 23-year-old man, I was like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah.
You know, this is strange. Why do I leap into the air in these pants when the mail arrives? This is not the way I thought my life would go. But now that, I guess I'm just so much older, I'm just not vain anymore. I just don't care about that. You know, it's just really cool. It's really cool to meet somebody like at a restaurant or a bar. Or I was just in Singapore and I met these tourists from Australia who were huge Blues Clues fans, and it was just so much fun. You know, it's really an honor and a privilege to be not just a part of a small part of culture, like pop culture or whatever, but to be, if I am Grover to anyone in the world, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's got to be overwhelming though, right?
Again, it probably would be if I thought about it a lot. But I tend to just not really dwell. You know?
Yeah. So, I mean, common sense, if there is such a thing, probably would have seen you go in one of two different directions after you left the show. You either could have parlayed that success into another role on another children's show, or you would have gone in the complete opposite direction and said, you know, like, screw all that kid friendly stuff. I'm a serious artist, you know, and just gone in the other direction, gone darker. You seem to take a third route though. Like you faded from the public eye a little bit and you ultimately stayed in children's entertainment. How much of that was intentional?
I mean, first of all, I don't think any of that even actually happened. I mean, the story of my actual professional life is that I've always been a voiceover guy.
Yeah.
And I was a voiceover guy the entire time I was doing Blues Clues. It was really my main gig, you know? And when Blues Clues stopped, that's what I did for the next 20 years, you know? So there was that consistency there. I left Blues Clues and then made a record with the Flaming Lips, but I didn't leave Blues Clues to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to be honest, like, after the show, after I left Blue's Clues, it had actually opened many more doors than it had closed in terms of being an actor. But I was just burned out.
Yeah.
I really had nothing left. I mean, I was in every take of every shot every day on a blue screen, and for what felt like 150 years. So I just needed to not be an entertainer for a while,
So correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like Blue's Clues was the anomaly. That was you had your career, and then Blue's Clues came along, and that was just something you did for a few years. And then when that went away, you just kept doing what you had been doing the entire time.
Well, what's cool is when I first moved to New York, I was up for a role on Homicide, like a recurring role on Homicide at the same time that I was up for this pilot for Nickelodeon. And so one could not have been darker and the other one could not have been brighter. And Blue's Clues, I mean, I thought Blue's Clues was so punk rock and weird.
Yeah.
And it had sort of this clown Samuel Beckett vibe to it that I just really thought was neat. I never thought it would go anywhere. I really didn't. I didn't think it would work. I thought it was too smart. Like this idea of the degree to which they were pushing the interaction and the degree to which they were allowing for silence on television, all this cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this is ballsy, but there's no way,
Yeah.
And then of course it aired and it just exploded.
It's nuts.
So you mentioned the pants. Have you kept the striped shirts or the pleated pants for nostalgia's sake? Do you still have any?
I have 2 shirts. I own the original thinking chair. I'm actually looking at it right now. It's in my studio here.
That's awesome.
Man.
And I've got, I believe it's the very first notebook that they ever made. I've got the first 3 clues. And I don't have the pants. The pants would never, ever, ever fit me anymore. I look back at that show and I'm like, what was I doing? How many miles per day was I running to be that skinny? Because I'm not like a naturally skinny dude. I'm built much more like Gimli from Lord of the Rings. That was extreme. I think I was very busy. I think working in every take of every shot every day.
Yeah, that takes a toll, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you ever take this album on a tour, though, you're going to have like a little, like an exhibit in the corner with all this stuff, because that's what, people are going to want to see that, like in between sets.
Oh, what you mean? Like bring the chair?
Yeah, bring the chair. Have a little like behind plexiglass. Have the outfit.
Oh yeah. Well, no.
No. So, is the chair as comfortable as it looks? I have to ask.
Not if you sit in it like a normal chair. If you just kind of sit in it like that, it's kind of too deep and really weird. What you got to do is fling your legs over the side, and then it's fantastic. It's where I read actually most days. If I got a book, I read there.
That's amazing. It's got to take up a huge amount of space, though.
It's big, yeah.
It's big.
It kind of has its own dedicated space here.
It's the room, its own dedicated room. Yeah. You mentioned the blue screen. That show, I think, more than almost any other, was just all blue screen. It was you and a screen, and that was pretty much it. You had everything you were interacting with, except for the chair, was not really there. How long did that take to get used? Like, I don't know if it ever felt normal, but how long did that take to get used to?
I mean, we never got used to it, and it was difficult, and it was confusing, and not just for me, but also for the directors and for anyone who was really kind of doing it. But by like the 3rd season, we were kind of ninja about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the stuff that seems really hard was often not very hard. It was the very simple things that just became very tedious. Like, Steve, you moved your face 0.4 inches to the left when you said that line, which means you just knocked the salt shaker off the table and we have to start again.
Oh, no.
So sometimes things were just really hard.
Yeah.
But
you had to keep that energy level up the entire time.
Yeah, that was always tough. It was always tough. There were times where I just wanted to lay down. Yeah, but I mean, actually, all those technical things, that doesn't form my memory of Blue's Clues. I mean, what I remember, what the show was always about to me, what I saw as my job, was cultivating the relationship to the camera, and being as specific as I possibly could, and making that a viable, real relationship, and making it so the kids actually think that I heard what they said.
Yeah.
That was always the challenge for me. And as an actor, as a young actor, like, I was really into that, really into seeing how far we could take that, you know?
Yeah. We have a question from one of our listeners that was just too good not to ask. How did Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper make Paprika? What happened there?
Well, I don't feel like I think that everyone knows the answer to that. I mean, you know.
I'm just curious how Paprika
just
came out of it.
explains itself, right?
Oh, I see. How does salt plus pepper equal?
Yeah, I'm not asking for the actual logistics. I mean, I think we can.
I thought
how does salt and pepper come together to make paprika?
I thought you were asking like a condiment biology question. Really uncomfortable answer. I don't know why paprika. I thought it was cute. Although I remember when we were talking about their kid should be named Herb, which I thought would have been hilarious.
That would have been very cute.
Yeah. But there was paprika, and then I believe there was cinnamon after that. So I don't really know how that works, how the alchemy works.
Yeah. The biology is pretty clear, but the alchemy is still a mystery.
So we read recently that as of a few years ago, you did a Make-A-Wish event in character as Steve from Blue's Clues. Was that pretty wild for you?
Not for me, but I think it really freaked that guy's dad out. No, that was great fun. That was great fun. Anytime, I mean, I can't do it anymore because I'm bald. But anytime that I could just duck into the phone booth and come out as Steve from Blue's Clues and make some kid's day, that was just always awesome, wonderful, you know. And the kids were at the party. The kids were like, "Oh, cool! It's Steve. Great!" Yeah. Like they didn't stop to think, "Oh, how strange! This actor probably lives in New York and now he's in New Jersey. Why is he here at my birthday party?" They were just like, "Clearly, Steve skidooed out of the television and now he's here."
Yeah,
and that's wonderful for us.
It's a whole different reality for kids, isn't it? It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing. I mean, you've said a couple times here that you try not to think about. You know, when back then when you're on the show, and even now, you try not to think about, the role that you've played or the continuing importance. But I mean, you stopped making the show 15 years ago. I mean, you're here today talking to us about it. You do Make-A-Wish a couple years ago. I mean, there are still millions of kids watching and loving this show, and it's a huge part of their lives.
If that's true, then I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess it is still on Amazon. And I mean, I'm trying to think, was there a show that I watched as a little kid that was 15 years old? And I suppose there was, Fred Rogers and Sesame Street. And all that
Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street had been on longer than that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's it feels great to me, but it's a real credit to Angela Santamero, who created the show, and Tracy Johnson, who drew the show. And, it's a real testament to the really profound work that they did.
Yeah. I'm curious to get your opinion on this. We don't like to get political on the show, but recently it's been hard not to. But I'm wondering, we're not going to get too political, but I'm wondering what you think art is going to look like for the next 4 years. I mean, are you in the Amanda Palmer school of thought that President Trump is going to have, usher in a new golden age for punk rock and resistance art? Or are you a little bit more realistic?
Well, I mean, you couldn't have Austin if you didn't have the rest of Texas, right? So, I do think that people will, I think this is the point. I think this is why art is. And I think that, I think it will certainly foment and inspire and cause an awful lot of reactions. It's hard not to react.
It is. It is.
I think it's going to take a minute, though. I think a lot of really brilliant, well-meaning, deep-thinking people are just going, "What?"
It hasn't really settled in yet.
Yeah, I think there's a WTF moment that's happening. It's going to take a second, Yeah. But I do think conditions like this, which are pretty unprecedented, certainly in my lifetime. I think conditions like this, where there's been obvious indications that expression will be repressed. I mean, I think that I think there will certainly be an interesting reaction to that.
Yeah. Something I loved when we were looking around was your tweet that you did on December 19th. Maybe Trump is visited by ghosts of Prince, Bowie, and Leonard Cohen on Christmas Eve, and everything will be cool after that. I like that.
Isn't that fun to think of that?
Yeah.
Him sitting in Trump Tower in like a nightgown with one of those Victorian night hats and like a candle, eating oatmeal.
Which is, I'm sure, how he sleeps.
Yeah, right. And then Bowie shows up and he's like, Mr. Trump, seriously, allow me to show you the world. And then he flies around with David Bowie. It'd be just so amazing.
There's your art right there, man. You got to write that or sing about that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's good actually.
It's really good. Don't give that one away for free.
There's the next 3-song trilogy.
So this, you said this this has taken you a long time Foreverywhere. It's taken you guys a long time to put together. Are you thinking down the road? Is there another one in you, or are you just sort of going to let this one ride for a little while?
Well, we're going to see what happens. I mean, I would love to do another one. Steven and I have already talked about doing another one. There's a little thing we did on the record, which is a little piece of radio theater, which I've always wanted to do radio theater.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have a Bert and Ernie album that was just all kind of radio theater, and I loved that as a kid. So we did this thing where a giant comes over and helps us write a song.
I love that part.
And yeah, and we were thinking, how great would it be to do a whole holiday album like that? Sort of like when David Bowie visits Bing Crosby.
Yeah.
Hey guys, happy holidays. Oh, hey Rick, cool. Hey, there's a sense on the record that we're not always. We like Rick, but it's kind of a bummer. There's always something bad that happens when he shows up.
Yeah. I love when he leaves and you guys are just like, oof. It's just like, oh man. It's just like that exhalation when he finally leaves.
Yeah. That was really, really fun to do. I think the way we did it is Steven and I just recorded our parts together, and then I did the giant in the next take.
That's awesome.
in the gaps,
See, there you go. There's your voiceover gig coming to work.
Yeah. And that's a voice I used to do on Blues Clues all the time.
Yeah.
I used to do a giant voice on Blues Clues all the time. So you used it for that.
Where would you be today if Blues Clues had never happened for you?
Oh, I'm sure I'd be a waiter. No, I think I still would have had the voiceover career, because I was doing the voiceover thing before Blues Clues. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be in New York. I really don't. New York and I don't really get along so much.
Really?
But
You'd be
I don't know. I don't know where I'd be. Boy, it's weird to think about.
Steve, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish we had more time with you, but this has just been a lot of fun. And yeah, Foreverywhere, we're going to link to the release date up there in Brooklyn, and we'll link to the album so people can buy it. What days it go on sale? February
27th, I think.
27th, that sounds about right. Somewhere around there. We'll link to it so people can grab it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. This has been great.
All right. Thanks, guys.
I think we should start introducing new segments into our show. We could do mail
Going
time.
crazy.
We could do mail time and get excited. Or you could leave.
We have to get ridiculously excited about it.
Yes, and I was thinking from now on we won't actually put in the title who we're interviewing, but we'll leave clues for people, and they'll have to figure them out. Never really say. Don't even introduce the person. Just start talking to them and
Just
see if they can figure it out.
Feed some clues throughout, and then at the very end, be like, "All right,
did
now
you
let's
solve the
figure
mystery,
out
kids?
You solved the mystery."
No, that was a fun interview. I really enjoyed it.
I did too. That was fun. That was really fun. And disclaimer, I've been trying to get him on the show for a long time. So and the way that this eventually happened was completely serendipitous. Like it came through somebody else who represented him, and I didn't realize that she represented him because we had made contact for a different guest. And so it was complete serendipity that he found his way to us, because I was trying to get him on the show for a long time and it never worked out. So I'm glad this finally did happen.
Trying to get somebody else to wait a second. You can get me Steve? We want Steve.
Forget that other person.
Forget that guy. Yeah. No, and I think I really hope you guys enjoy this. I know a lot of people, when I put up on my Facebook who we're interviewing, some people get a reaction and some people don't. I mean, everyone gets a reaction, but some people get a bigger one than others. And Steve was one where everyone was kind of, they had a question or they wanted to know something. So I really hope you enjoyed it. And, it's always awesome to interview people from, that people remember nostalgically.
Absolutely.
And he's still doing awesome things, which, by the way, get his album. I don't even think we said that. Get his album.
We did say it during the interview, but get his album. I will, if
good.
anybody's still listening at this point, we will link to the album and we will link to that, the CD release party, if you want to go, if you're in the Brooklyn area.
Yeah. Perks of the job. We got to listen to it. Yes. Achievement unlocked. All right. You can follow us on Twitter at the GBB Podcast, Facebook.com/the GBB Podcast. And I am Justin at 140 Justin C.
I'm Jamie at the Roarbots.
And have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
This podcast has been a production of the Geek Dad Podcast Network. If you've enjoyed this content, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/geekdad.